All right, let's do this weekly review. Okay, so you see that we're pretty bullish, right? So we closed above these all-time highs. These all-time highs over here, right? We closed above them 2 weeks ago, and we've continued that movement clearly. Even though last week we had a pretty indecisive week, it was pretty consolidatory. Price is like at this point there's a lot of consolidation going on here because maybe we're still too bullish to go down, but we're pretty steep. And to just continue to go up, sometimes like you can get this stall here. So, this week, instead of dipping down into this fair value gap here on the weekly, we are now running higher. Now, I'm pretty bullish on equities because we've had some really good data releases and really good earnings so far. The American economy is actually doing pretty well. And the fact that we did not run into this fair value gap, in such a steep premium, we couldn't even chase down back into this. The narrative is telling me that this is really bullish. And now we've closed over the previous week high as well. So, that's another confluencing factor showing, bulls. Now, Monday, we had a new week opening gap lower, completely fill that in on that candle and create a daily bullish order block. We then follow up with a large rise, but then a sharp retracement back lower intraday. And then we run lower here and return back to this rejection block. But price ends up, basically doing the opposite of this candle and run higher. And so this to me now signals, bullishness, right? Because we had a strong wick lower after purging liquidity and that followed, by bearishness. But then now we had a complete opposite move and we had a wick higher. And so now this is going to be, followed by bullishness, right? Because if price is reaching this low, but then we have all the energy to come all the way back up and close higher, it's telling you that we're really bullish. And we just came down here to revisit some levels. And if you look at the bodies here, the bodies are also staying above this daily bullish order block. And then price continues to run higher, closes above this candle's high. And then Friday we had a bit of a indecisive candle. On the 4 hour here, starting off with Monday, new week opening gap lower. I'm not sure why can't really see that new week opening gap. What's the problem here? Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. So new week opening gap lower. You see that overnight we fill it pretty much immediately. Continue that expansion here going into 10 a.m. and then we have formed a fair value gap that forms here by the end of the day. We return back to that in Asian and then continue running higher against all these relative equal highs. And then we consolidate pretty much going into the next morning and then afternoon. But then, hitting off in the PM. I think this actually happened like in Asian, but we can talk about this later. Price slams lower. And then continues lower here into this fair value gap. And then the bodies are staying pretty much around this fair value gap, even though we are wicking lower and returning back into this new opening gap. Then we, engulf higher after purging this low. And then we stall a little bit inside this 4 hour fair value gap for a bit. But then we ultimately have the strength to run through it and then continue higher with the fair value gap that forms here on Wednesday. And the low of the week here was actually Sunday. We didn't create a new low of the week here. We just came back and revisited the low, this new week opening gap one more time, just to run higher. Close above this 4 hour fair value gap, and then we have fair value gap that runs here, and we retrace back to it, and then just to run higher, immediate rebalance to that fair value gap to run higher, close to the consequent encroachment of this wick. That's followed through by some more massive bullish candles, taking out zero to equal highs. Having a gap that stayed open overnight, but then we had SMT that formulated here going into Friday in the morning, early in the morning, and then that was followed through by some bullish bearish price action. Ultimately, on the 1 hour gap lower, we like the bodies here are closing below this low, so that's really a purge of liquidity, even though we didn't take out this low, right? The bodies here came here, purged of liquidity, then broke market structure higher here. And I could bet you that there's SMT here, these lows right here. Yeah, there were. Yeah, you see that? You see how this low took out this low on ES? NQ failed to do so. So that's signaling bullishness, which now is preceded by bullish price action. We come into these for value gap a couple times, run higher, take out all these relative equal highs. Going into the lunch in the AM session, we had a large run up here on Monday, and then we had a retracement back into this fair value gap going into the PM session. So really lackluster Monday PM, expansive Monday AM. Then overnight we had a pretty large move that took out all these relative equal highs over here. Retrace lower, going into Asian, then run higher here. Bearish order block that forms here, which price now is struggling to get through the mean threshold of this, right? If you look at this bearish order block that forms, we were coming into the lower half of it. The bodies are not even closing really in it. Instead, price runs lower, and then retraces, takes out the relative equal lows from here, consolidates for a bit, manipulation below these relative equal lows, breaks market structure here. No for value gap, so there's not really any displacement here, even though we have this strong candle. It's then followed through by, coming into this 1 hour SIBI, and then running lower one more time here going into Wednesday. Purge against this low, and one more return back to the new opening gap. Also taking out this low in the process. I believe there's SMT here with ES as well. And then price, was there SMT with ES at that point? Yeah, so you see ES took out these relative equal lows here, but NQ did not. And so price starts to run higher, breaks market structure, consolidates for a little bit, going into the Asian session of Wednesday. And then London, we have an expansion higher here, return back to that fair value gap here, pretty much going into 7, 8 a.m. And then we have a 1 hour bearish order block, that a bullish order block that forms here at 8 a.m. But then once the 9:30 open kicks off, we come and we engulf over this low and come back into this fair value gap one more time, but just to close higher, which is really a bullish signature. And so that was followed through by bullish price action. I really caught a long there earlier in the week. Ended up taking all the all-time highs out and then consolidated for a bit. Formed SMT here going into the early morning of going into the morning of Friday, and then we had a return back into the TGIF range after expanding pretty much higher for the rest of the afternoon. So hopefully this was helpful. Catch you guys in the next video.